welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This time I'm talking to Deb Clark about her work and motivations, along with a range of other topics I hope you'll find interesting. Deb is a landscape, seascape and tourism photographer based in Hamilton, New Zealand. She's happiest outside, capturing moments in time, from the first light of morning to the last light of the dying day. Her work has been published in Lens magazine, in InSpades, Nomadict, Nisi Fine Art Photography and various other publications. Deb is a featured photographer with Nikon New Zealand and was one of the 10 photographers chosen to exhibit in New Zealand's Iconic Futures exhibition. She's also a Nikon NZ Z creator, Nisi ambassador and Fstop gear staff pro. She's worked with New Zealand destinations by region, Showcase New Zealand, Christchurch in particular, and the South with American Airlines, and has worked on multiple campaigns for Adobe, provided a gallery of images to the New Zealand Defence Force in Belgium, and sent her purchased images all over New Zealand and the world. Deb is always searching for the right light, the right angle, the moving cloud, and always learning and looking at ways to extend her skills. She strives to push the boundaries of accepted techniques, looking for the X factor, that something extra that takes an image from average to exceptional. We talk about her career in photography. We also touch on social media and how to market yourself appropriately. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Deb, welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleased to have you on the show. Been following your work for a little while and, very happy that you've said yes to coming on board.
Thanks.
Why don't we start with how you got started in photography and landscape photography in particular?
Yeah, sure. So I've been shooting for probably coming up 7 years or about 7 years. I started, probably as most people do, back in the day, I used to have a camera with film and all that kind of stuff, and I was never any good at it, to be honest. I was always cutting someone's head off or cutting their feet off or something, and it would be something that you just sort of did now and again, but never in any serious kind of way, just family photos and flowers. I was into flowers at the time, and I think that's just because it was in your backyard and you had something to shoot. Then I never really did anything with it for years, and about 7 or 8 years ago, my partner started getting into photography, and he's a all or nothing type of person, so it went from nothing to 500% overnight. And so it was kind of a case of, and I was following him around, we're going places, and I'd sort of amuse myself doing something else. And then I was like, this is just actually really annoying because as a photographer, once they get going, they think 2 minutes have passed when it was actually 2 hours. So he upgraded.
I've done that. I've got to say, I've done that to my wife several times.
I know, it's so mean, isn't it, really?
We're out on a cliff top actually earlier this week, and it was before sunrise. So I've got 2 headlamps, but the batteries in one died. So we'd only got the one headlamp. She had a phone as a bit of a torch, and she stopped to sort something out, and I went around a corner. We were up on top of the cliff. I went around a corner behind these rocks. She couldn't see me. She tried to ring me, and my phone was on silent, so she wasn't very happy with me. But she found me eventually.
I know. I mean, we really should be much kinder to these people, I think.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you a story about it if I remember a bit later on, about a lovely person on a photography trip that wasn't a photographer. But yeah, so Brent upgraded and gave me his camera, and it was a Canon 60D, and so I knew pretty much nothing about them really, and I thought all cameras were that hard to use. It was pretty full on. It was a bit of a by fire really. But I started playing around, and I wanted to, when I first saw long exposure photography, I couldn't decide if I liked it or not. It was so different to anything I'd ever seen. And initially I thought, no, doesn't look real enough. but oh my goodness, you take that first photo and then that is it. You are tied into long exposure photography for life, I think.
Yep.
So he gave me some settings and I took my first photo. I didn't have a tripod, so it was on the roof of a ute at the beach, and it was an amazing sunset. Probably never seen one so good since, and took that first photo, and then that was it really.
Amazing.
And I trucked along with that camera for about I don't even know, a couple of years, 18 months. And then one day it just died. We were on a trip and, you know, we'd got up at ridiculous clock for sunrise. I took the first photo and it just died. Horrible death. And and that was it. We were still halfway around and I was like, you know what? I never really buy anything for myself, like expensive, or, you know, I'm always sort of careful because you're sort of, you know, so many other things to spend your money on. But we went to a camera shop and literally the only lens, wide angle lens they had was a Nikon. And so that was it. I was converted. So I ended up with a D750. And within sort of 6 months, my partner had changed to Nikon as well. And I've never looked back really. I've never used I've only ever used those two brands. So I don't know other brands. And people ask me all the time, what camera should I buy? But I literally don't know them. And I think everybody gets to just like what they like and you know. And
to be honest, I think it's what you're comfortable with. If you want something smaller and lighter weight than some of the Sony's, great, and some of the Fuji. But also now mirrorless, you know, you've got that option in both the Nikon ranges. But and to be honest, once you get above sort of even 15 megapixels on your sensor, you kind of, it doesn't matter what camera you get. I
doesn't really. No,
it's really about what you do with it rather than. You know, I forget who it was, but there's that quote, you know, the best camera the best camera is the one that you've got with you.
That's right. That's exactly right. I loved that D750. I still have it actually, but I do plan on selling it because it's just been sitting there for sort of 18 months and not been touched, and it's such a waste. But I have moved on to mirrorless. I've got a Z7. And I waited for that camera for ages for it to come on the market, mostly because I wanted to stay with Nikon, but I had to think about, I had an accident and I can't carry all that weight anymore. So everything I've pared back as much as I can. And that was one of the first things. I had been waiting for a little while. I wanted to sort of, you know, the camera was great, but it was just starting to limit me, you know, what I thought that I could produce and what I thought the camera could produce probably weren't lining up. That might have been a little bit overconfidence on my part, to be fair. But yeah. So I love the Z7. I cart it everywhere. It's always in my car, and it's good fun. So it's just been a natural progression really. And I've gone through, you know, lots of different stages, and here we are.
So what is it about landscape photography in particular that gets you out and about?
So I mean, it was what Brent was doing, so that's what I kind of started to do. But I'm mad for being outside. You know, if I could live at the beach, then that's exactly where I would be, you know, 24 hours a day. So I like to be outside. I like to walk and I like to hike. I walk most days, and I just enjoy being outside. If I'm at home, I'm very rarely sitting inside. I'm sitting out under the deck or, you know, whatever it is. So landscape photography suits my personality. I have a really busy kind of day job, a company that I've had for over 20 years now, and it's pretty full on. And landscape photography is so good for the soul. You know, you have to make a little bit of an effort, and you might have to, you know, hike into places and all those sorts of things, but you're out there in that quiet and in those beautiful moments of sunrise and sunset. You just don't get that. I don't get that with anything else. So it's just, it's good for your head. You know, when there's a lot going on up there, which there is on a Monday to Friday, it just empties everything out, and you just, I just love it. I mean, there's things about it that, you know, wouldn't it be nice if sunrise was at lunchtime and you could sleep in? but of course that's the main part of it.
Yeah, I'd be sleeping in every day if that was
it's probably the one bit that I struggle with occasionally. If I'm getting up for sunrise, I am up for sunrise, and I'm at wherever I'm going to be, usually an hour too early, because if I'm going to get up, I don't want to be late. But I don't love it, to be honest. I like my bed.
Yeah, I like my sleep, and some days I definitely have to come back home and have that nana nap in the afternoon after getting up, 3:30 in the morning, because the old brain and body just get to a point where it's like, go to sleep.
That's it. We're done. Yeah, I know. It's when you're on some of those sort of photography trips where you're literally out to get photos in a period of time, and it's never long enough, and you're up for every sunrise and sunset, and you're shooting astro half the night, and you get back from your holiday and people are like, wow, you look like you had a busy holiday, which is really kind for saying, oh my god, you need some sleep. But it's all part of the fun, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's all part of the fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's why so many people do it, is because it's it is that fun.
Yeah.
So I guess looking at what you're doing with your photography, you've done things like tourism and destination marketing, social media marketing, which are sort of out beyond just taking the photos and sharing them like some people.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through some of what you've done in that space and how that's sort of directed how you do what you do?
I guess it was so initially when you get asked to do some of those things, I was quite, oh wow, they want me to have a go, and so you sort of agree to everything, and then you're halfway through it and you're like, why did I agree to this? It's just it's too hard, and it's too, or weather's not cooperating.
Deadline's looming and I haven't got it done, and there's no way.
I know. I don't know. I mean, they are fun. And in general, most of those things were just incorporated into things that I was already doing. So trips that I was already planning on. Or they would ask, they would see photos that I was posting and buy those images. So I did a lot of that kind of stuff. I did some sort of week-long trips, collecting photos for some companies and some places like the Coromandel and that kind of stuff. And most of it is really good fun. It is good fun, but of course it's a paid job, so you have to produce, and that does put an extra layer of stress on things. And I've changed my kind of views on it over time, because initially it was just really nice to be asked, but now it's like, oh God, am I going to be able to fit that in? And actually, do I really want to do that? Because I'm at a point, and I've been there for a little while, where I decided that photography, I didn't want it to be my full-time gig.
Yep.
Because I felt that if it was, all those extra layers of stress of having to eat because of it and that sort of stuff would take all the fun out of it for me. And I like my day job. I like my company. I worked hard to build it up, and it's going really well. And I'm good with turning up there most days, so I wanted to keep the photography as a bit of an outlet. So I've said no to a lot of things in the last sort of couple of years. But if something really resonates, or I'm already going somewhere, or, I'll be like, well, I haven't actually been there, that would be quite cool, depending on what they want, then I'm all in.
And if you can make a bit of money out of it, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And it pushes you a little bit, because you wouldn't necessarily be out there trying to get a particular something. So you get a bit fussy as a landscape photographer as time goes on. You're like, oh no, that's not, high enough, or, red enough, or, that composition's a bit average. And, so you can get to a point where you're not really working that hard, or you're not trying out enough, I think. So it does push you to make sure that you're looking properly and you're seeing what you need to see. And so it's, it's good. It's a bit of fun. I don't, like I said, I don't do as much as I used to. I have sort of done a little bit just of late, and this last 12 months I've been working with Nikon New Zealand as a Z creator. So that's collecting images up. It's happening right around the world, actually, images up that Nikon can use to promote the mirrorless cameras. And that's been great for me. Like, I've really, really enjoyed it. I was a bit nervous about it because it's a big, long commitment, but I've really enjoyed it. I've taken photos in places I never probably would have gone to, but I've, gone out of my way to go there, and I've done some different things, and it gave me a bit of an inspiration boost, I suppose. So that's been really good. Most of the other stuff that I've sort of done, I do quite a lot for Adobe over time. So I've done a lot of little mini videos. I'm not a videographer. I'm like the most average videographer you've ever seen, but I can whiz up these little tiny little things of 14 seconds for Instagram or whatever, on techniques and things that I use in Lightroom, or I have done one Photoshop one, but I don't profess to be a Photoshop master. So and they're really good. They're really well paying jobs. They're not too often, they don't put too much stress on me. Those kinds of things are quite cool. American Airlines and places like that, where they're just wanting a little short campaign. I do quite a lot of that sort of stuff. And I do enjoy it. It's fun. Yeah.
No, fantastic.
Yeah.
So on the social media marketing, you talk on your website a little bit about how important organic following is. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that's so important?
Yeah, well, I do think it's really important. I mean, I started my Instagram account and it grew to, I don't know, I think I from memory, it was like 10,000 followers in less than 3 months or something. Wow. It was ridiculous, but it was the time, and it's not like that now. And
no, well, you struggle if you're just doing still photography. I know that myself.
I know. If you're not like, a full-on composite artist, you seem to be getting some fairly average kind of likes on your photos. Yeah. I've moved on from caring about it that much. I mean, it's always nice to get, a reasonable amount of likes. And obviously, if it's a job or something that I'm doing, then I really want to do well for those people. Sure. But I don't really worry about it all that much anymore. It used to be quite a thing, and we'd work quite hard at it. But I don't know. I think you just got to, what are you doing it for? Like, are you posting on there because you are out taking photos and it's really nice to have somewhere to put them? Mm-hmm. And that's what Instagram was for me to start with. But prior to Instagram, I was on IM and I had a reasonable following on there, and I loved IM. It was a really nice platform to be on. People were really supportive and that kind of stuff. But I did end up on Instagram, and I mean, it's been good in lots of ways, but I think you just have to, I get messaged all the time, like, how do you build your followers and how do you do this? And really the only way to do it is to be regular, post it, all the time, and be interacting with your followers. And an organic following, I think, is critically important, because there was that time when a lot of accounts got big fast, but it wasn't legitimate. There were bots out there doing followers and so forth. They were buying followers. They'd get a big feature. Well, this is what we were saying. Big features were happening, and then all of a sudden they had another 1,000 followers, and and it was, and a lot of that was legitimate. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it kind of got to the point where you're like, are these, is this actually a true story or not a true story? So you just got to, I think that if you know that you're posting what you like and you're interacting with people that like your stuff and want to talk to you about it and different things, then that's a good thing. That's just going to keep building over time if you commit to it. But it's a hugely long-term commitment. Like you can't stop. And when I had my accident about, I think it's 3 years ago or 4 years ago now, I literally could not post because I didn't have use of both my arms. And it was just like, that was it. It was over. And I just never really quite got back into it. I still post. I try and post minimum once a week, but usually 2 to 3 times a week if I can, definitely stories. And that's enough, really, because with other platforms and other things that you're doing, and you run, full-time businesses and all that other stuff, you've got to sort of, it's a juggling act. It really is. Yeah. I don't know. Everybody has a different kind of perception on it. and I do think, which I'm quite bad at the moment, but I do think, it's almost more important to put a story or a reel up every day than it is to post, because at the moment it seems to be all about the reels. Well, that's not really where I'm going, so
Yeah,
I
no,
don't even look at
I think
them.
that's one of the major complaints by stills
Yeah,
photography.
yeah,
That community has sort of been, had their had Instagram's back turned on them, and
yeah,
it's all about we're trying to be a bit like TikTok, and
yeah. I mean, it is.
that to me is not really doing it's
No,
following much favors.
no, I don't think so. I mean, lots of people are into it, but people that have been around for a little while, they're just not really. To
Hmm.
them, if you're a photographer, then you're a photographer. You're not a videographer and everything else.
Yeah, there are
You
people that do that, but yeah,
That's right. Yeah, but not like, if you just take photos, you don't want to have to go and learn to be a videographer just so that you can post a reel on Instagram. It's too hard, and
yeah,
it's too much for most people. I don't know. It was it was a funny time when all of that was kind of changing, because I do, and I still hear people all the time, oh, it used to be so fun. And it did used to be lots of fun. You'd go out and you'd take a photo you were really happy with, and then you'd throw it up on Instagram, and you'd get, 150 comments and 11,000 likes, and it was no problem, and you had a great old time. And now you go out, you work much harder, you're much better at what you used, because
yeah.
you've
The
had all this
quality of your work's higher.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you put it up there, and you may get 1,000 likes, and you may get, 20, 30, 50 comments, and that's about it. And it sort of can be a bit disheartening for people that were there before, but you just
yeah,
can't,
yeah.
you can't take it too seriously, really. I do feel a little bit sorry for the people that are using it as part of their, the full-time photographers or whatever it is that they're doing, and that's one of the tools that they use, for their business. And I do feel for them,
Yeah.
because they're really having to adapt, but it's the way it
Yeah,
goes.
and I've got to be honest, in looking at some of the stuff I'm seeing in my own work around, both Facebook and Instagram, sort of the marketing side of things.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
constantly getting bombarded to promote your stuff, etc.,
yeah,
etc., in
yeah.
emails and messages and little pop-ups and whatever all over Facebook and
I
on
know.
even on Instagram, and that's all about them trying to drag some money out of you, which is fine. That's
Yeah,
their business. But
yeah.
I honestly can't say that I've seen some results, but I can't say that I've seen spectacular results out of paid sponsorship either. And for me,
No.
I just think that is also a little bit inauthentic in terms of what social media is really
Mm,
meant to be about. And I
yeah.
mean, I was in sort of the boom times of the original .com era,
Right.
and in the industry at the time, back in '99, 2000, when
Yep.
you got a job in it if you could spell Java.
Yep.
But
Yep.
looking back at those days and looking at the rise of social media in the early 2000s, and 2010s,
Yep.
one of the things I always struggled with, because I was working with some fairly large brands here in Australia around their online marketing and so forth. And one of the things that I, always sort of struggle with is how do you actually take that branding and make that work really well
Mm,
within those, what is effectively an organic social
yeah.
transaction between friends, largely, particularly
That's
in
right.
the Facebook space, and it does tend to get more, and you've seen where the advertising is going and has gone,
Yeah.
in the past 10 years or so,
Yeah.
and it's just overtaken most of the actual that social transaction. you know I mean, yeah, okay, people can still
Yeah.
organise their events and whatever on Facebook, but it's
Mm,
it's nowhere near what it was back in the early days of when it first started, and it's really shifted its focus in terms of what it's about.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? That like from a business point of view, as someone that's had a business for a long time, I in the back of my head, I'm thinking there's this free thing that you can put your stuff on and make money out of. So then you can kind of understand why they want to make money out of their
Absolutely,
their platform. So you can kind of understand that. But I sort of pull it back to, this is actually just social media. So it's not to be taken 500% seriously, in my opinion, So sometimes you're going to get things that work well for a period of time, and then it's like any other business, you have to adapt and move on or change, and I do think that Instagram has done that, particularly for me. And that's probably partly that when I really made that decision, why am I pushing so hard? Because I don't actually want to do this full time. What I'd like to do is make enough money that I could do it full time without having to do all my other things that I do. But
I can tell you why you're pushing so hard. It's the endorphins you get. It's
it is.
About, 1,000 comments.
Look, honestly, when I think about it now, I don't think I've done much of anything in my life that makes me feel as good as when I know I've just taken an X Factor photo or a photo that I'm going to be really proud of. I will be grinning all day, and I'll be mulling it over in my head, and I'll be desperate to get to the computer to try and have a play, and nothing makes me feel that good, and that's probably a little bit extreme, but nothing for a long time. You just get all these years down the track, and you're like, oh, which is what I'm doing. I'm heading down to the South Island, fingers crossed COVID doesn't get me before then, next weekend, to hike the Rootburn track. Nice. And I'm so excited about it. I've had my camera packed and unpacked like 4 times in the last week, just like, oh, maybe I should take that. And okay, no, you can't carry that anymore. So, and I'm so excited about it. And why? I was out with my camera last weekend, and I loved that too. That was exciting as well, So, yeah, I feel like you can be anywhere. You can walk down the beach. I love seascapes, by the way. I think they're very underrated as a good seascape. I think a good seascape photographer works bloody hard with, tides and things like that. And I love it. I love being out on the water like that.
I'd agree with you, being one myself. But I think it's not the easiest photography to deal with. I mean, I've had my Canon 6D in the shop twice now because I've given it a bit of not a dunking splash. This is just waves, waves splashing up over the top of me. Walked home or walked back to the car, completely and utterly drenched with the camera in my bag, feeling quite despondent about the fact that it's not working anymore. But
I know.
But I have been. It doesn't stop me going out.
No, God, no. I do feel like because I started with seascapes. That's where I started. And I still take a lot of seascapes, actually, because I spend quite a bit of time on the Coromandel, and I've got my own that I really love that have never appeared anywhere because that they were just for me. But I think you have to work really hard. You're dealing with water that moves at a different pace the entire time you're standing there. You're working and thinking all the time about how long you're going to go for, and all those sorts of things. Whereas I'm not saying that shooting mountains and clouds and stuff is any easier, but I feel like you.
The mountain's not going to go anywhere.
It's not going to go anywhere. And I think for me, like, I look at those clouds and I kind of, 30 seconds should do it, or hell, they're not even moving. I better go for 2 minutes, or, whereas when you're standing there at watching the waves coming in and out, you're literally there for a quarter of an hour while you're figuring out what the tides are doing and the waves are doing.
Just where to stand.
Yeah. Oh, it's great fun. I went to Piha and Muriwai a couple of 2 weekends in a row. I went to sort of different places, and and I just couldn't I'd forgotten how good it is when it's really extreme waves coming in. That's so much fun. That will make you feel alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so yeah, they're good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just harking back a little bit to the social media. One last question I want
Yeah,
to ask
sure.
you on that is what advice would you have for somebody that's kind of starting out? You know, they've they've bought themselves a nice camera. They've started
Yeah.
to work out how to take a reasonable shot. You know, they've got themselves a small following, a couple of hundred people or so.
Yeah.
What should they be doing to, build their following?
Um, I mean, there's probably a lot of different sort of ideas on this, but I think consistency is probably the key thing. Um, if you could post every day around about the same time, then that's what you should be doing, because you're going to build the people that are on that platform at that time, and you'll establish really good relationships with them. Or but if you're randomly throwing them up at all sorts of different times of the day, nobody knows where you are or when you're going to reply to them. And it is something like Instagram can be quite tricky, because they reply to you but then you don't see it, or because you've gone off to do something else. So if you can, nowadays, I think if you can post and then stick around it for half an hour so that you're actually replying to people that are there right then and there, that's a good way of building.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely getting the stories up and that kind of stuff. But consistency. The main thing that's tricky with that is, of course, who has actually 7 amazing photos every week that they can post? When I look back on when I was posting every day, I was like, what was I thinking, putting that up and that up and that up? And I must have been getting a bit desperate and, getting to the bottom of the barrel. And of course, and then Instagram went stupid and you start putting up 10 photos in one post and, so then it's even more hard work. But if you don't have 7 and you've got 3, then put up 3, but maybe around about that time, if you can, commit half an hour to commenting on somebody else's photos, or, because that is how you sort of do build it. And get a story up. If you can get a story up every day, I'm not that great at it. When I'm away or when I'm shooting, I'm really good. I'll put stories up regularly. But when I'm at home, I don't know. I only put stories up about photography or something relating to photography. It would be a rare moment that I would put anything private up there, but that's probably, I'm not a teenager,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I don't
anyone that
know.
follows me knows that there's zero private content.
There's literally no private content on there. I do, yeah. I mean, my private life is my private life, and I have lots of people
Absolutely.
that know what I'm doing all of the time, but I don't need
I'm
someone
not of the
random.
generation that shares it.
Yeah, but talk through what you're doing as well. Like if you're putting a post up and you're saying, well, I went to this place and sunset, I went with so and so, and people like to have a little bit of a blurb around what was going on. You don't have to write a novel. I'm wondering if, sometimes they just get too long and you end up skimming to the end, and that's actually, that person put a lot of trouble into putting the caption up in the first place. But maybe had it been a bit briefer, you would have sort of taken a little bit more notice. So that would be my main thing. You can auto post from Instagram to your Facebook page or your Twitter account or whatever it is that you're going to do. Some people are really good and they have everything. They've got TikTok and, the whole, I just don't even know how people keep on top of all of that. I do Instagram and Twitter, and that is quite enough for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's probably my advice: consistency.
I think that's really good advice too. Thank you, and hopefully, some of the listeners will get something out of that if if they're just starting out. In terms of where you live, how does that influence what you're shooting, or
It does a little
are you
bit.
traveling more than shooting around local area?
Yeah, so I live in Hamilton City, which is kind of flat. I mean, you have to get in the car and drive for 25 minutes to get to even be able to walk up a hill, and that's not a mountain. That's just like a rise. So it's pretty flat. We've got some beautiful spots here. We do, and I've been out shooting most of them over the years. I'm like other people. I don't shoot enough in my own home area, because when I'm at home, I'm actually working and looking after my family and doing all of those kinds of other things. And when
Yeah.
I'm away, it's all about shooting. So I'm probably, I need to do a little bit more in my own region. We've got some beautiful waterfalls here. We've got amazing beaches, sort of only 45 minutes away and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is nice, but as opposed to, we've got a family place up on the Coromandel, and when I'm up there, I shoot all the time. Because I can walk to the beach and I can walk up the mountain and I can, get to the trig and do all those kinds of things. So I'm a mad hiker. So, I've always got my camera with me. So I feel like that actually that's my home place. So even though I've lived in Hamilton for, I don't know, over 20 years, I feel like home is the Coromandel. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
When I'm away, because of New Zealand being so small, we can, jump in a car or jump on a plane, and in an hour we're in a completely different landscape. So, there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah. No, it's nice. What's the furthest you've had to travel to get a shot?
Well, I wouldn't say I had to go there, but I did go to Patagonia, and I did go to Iceland, and I have been to Spain. I went on a photo pills camp actually back in the day.
Okay.
The first one they ever did. I was like, that photo pills, that's where I need to be. I need to be on that camp. And I went and booked it, and then I was like, holy heck, I haven't been away from home, from my job that long before, and it was a bit of juggling, but we got there. So that's kind of international, would be the furthest. But in New Zealand, I've been shooting from the bottom of the South Island to the top of the North, and most places in between. But in saying that, there's still a lot of places that you haven't been to. You might have been to that area, but you didn't go down that road, or so there's still lots to do.
What's number one on your bucket list?
Home or away?
Oh, either.
Okay, so I had a trip to Norway planned prior to COVID, and I still would like to go there. I guess it's kind of possible later this year, but I don't know that I'm going to be a traveller this year. I've got decisions to make about that, but we'll see. But I would like to go there. I've got my itineraries all planned out, and my Canada itinerary is planned out, and I'd really love to go to Peru.
Okay,
Absolutely incredible landscape.
I can recommend Peru. Yes.
Have you been?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
We were there. It was either 2015 or 2016. I can't remember off the top of my head. Absolutely fantastic. We did, Machu Picchu, did a flight over the Nazca lines, which was just
nice,
amazing. Just literally ticking off those bucket list things. Where else did we go? Cuzco, obviously, which is on the way to Machu Picchu. Lima, of course. We did a few days in Chile on the way, and on the way back we did a side trip to Easter Island as well for 3 nights, which was absolutely awesome.
Yeah. Oh, look, honestly, I think if you go somewhere and you don't, no, I better rephrase that actually. Everywhere is beautiful if you look hard enough.
Absolutely.
Some places are just, they just have landscapes to die for. And I've traveled a little bit over the years, but prior to photography. But when you're a photographer or a landscape photographer, your whole perception of where you need to be has just changed. Like, you literally work these trips around locations or places that you want to get your camera to. So it's a different way of traveling. Last year, or no, not last year now, it'll be the year before, I went to Vietnam with a friend, and I didn't take my camera.
Wow.
I know, it's the first time I've left it at home. I dilemmaed, it was packed ready to go, and then I was like, you know what, I'm not going to take it. My friend is not a photographer, and I just thought, I'm just going to go. We wanted to do this trip together, and I had a great time. I had an amazing time, but now I need to go
I
back.
guess you tend to immerse yourself more in, other activities.
You do.
When you do that, when
Yeah.
you don't have the camera with you. I mean, I've
I like
done a few local Australian trips away without the camera, and deliberately it's family time. I'm not doing it, stupid o'clock to go and take photos.
Yeah. You do have to do it now and again, I think, because your whole you don't immerse yourself in the local culture the same. I don't think like when you've literally got 3 weeks or 2 weeks away, you don't actually have time to stay anywhere for too long. So because you're getting this photo and that photo and going to this location and all of the rest of it. But when you don't have it, you just stop and talk to people, and you have more time to get to know the locals and that kind of stuff. So I think it is really important to still do all of that. Because otherwise all you actually did was went to locations, took photos and came home. You didn't really get to know anything about that country.
Speaking of Peru and absorbing local culture, one of the things that you've got to do if you're not vegetarian, but if you're not vegetarian, make sure that you try kwee.
Oh, what is it?
Guinea pig.
You're not going to tell me. I'm going to have to research it. Oh, true.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Guinea pig. Interesting.
Delicious. I can recommend.
Okay. Well, I am one of those people that when I go to somebody's country, I want to eat what they eat and I want to drink what they drink and, that kind of stuff. And I'm really big about it. I don't want to go there and then Google to find the nearest 6-star restaurant or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
I want to eat the street food and all of that kind of stuff. So
well, you can't just
never know
on McDonald's and burgers and whatever.
Nah.
But a local there, as they said, they were foods. They were a food source for about 6,000 or 7,000 before they became a pet in Western culture. So,
interesting, eh?
They look cute. They taste nice.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right.
Has the pandemic changed your attitude towards travelling and photography? Is that one that you mentioned, not being a traveller this year?
No, it hasn't changed my views on photography, and I'm getting better about it, but I'm high risk, so I have an underlying health condition. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so it's not life threatening every day, but it can be. And so you just you're probably just a little bit more careful.
Understood.
So when I do travel, I want to know that it's relatively safe to do so. I'm not extreme about it at all. Not like I don't sort of veer off the other side of the road when people are coming towards or anything like that. I'm just a little bit more careful. I have known a couple of people that have got type 1 diabetics that have got it that haven't done so well, and so you just I'm just not stupid about it. So when I'm ready to go, I'll be gone. I'm not going to ever it's not going to stop me from doing things. I just want to feel good about going. Yeah. And going down the South Island this weekend or next weekend is probably a good step in that right direction. Because my last 3 flights when I've been going down there to do things have been cancelled for some reason or another. And I was actually quite pleased about it. I was like, oh no, I don't want to go anyway. But this one I really want to go, and I'm sure once I've got that one out of the way, I'll be feeling much better about it.
No, I'm certainly looking forward to my next international trip, hopefully in May.
Wow.
Yeah, well, my wife hasn't seen her family over in the UK for a few years now because of COVID, etc. So we're heading over there. I'm not sure exactly. We're trying to work out what the itinerary is going to look like. I'm going to try and sneak up to the Lake Districts for a few weeks. Not a few weeks, a week. do a bit of photography.
Yeah,
So that'll be the photography piece,
that'll
and
be fun.
the rest of it
Yeah.
will be family and reconnecting, I think. So
Oh, good. I think part of mine, and I know people at all extremes of, thinking around this, but New Zealand's really behind. We're really behind in the COVID. We've literally only just got it properly in the last couple of weeks.
yeah,
So it's rampant right now. It's everywhere.
yeah.
And
Mind you,
so
you're
we're
probably
really,
getting the strains that aren't as deadly
that's right.
as
Yeah,
the
that is
flame would
right.
be.
But everyone else has moved on. The rest of the world
Yeah,
opened up months ago, if not, but here
they've all
we are.
been in the pubs and clubs and whatever.
We're
And
still not letting anybody in for another couple of weeks. So we haven't even been able to leave, because if we came back, if we could get an MIQ spot,
spend 2 weeks.
we had to sit there for 2 weeks, and most people couldn't get the spot, so they were stuck overseas. So we haven't had a choice up till now, but anyway.
Well, hopefully, hopefully you enjoy your trip down the South Island.
Yeah, be good.
What are the things that motivate you creatively?
Well, I am a great researcher of, when I say researcher, I love looking at other people's work. I'm not looking at to say, okay, I need to line that absolute composition up and go and do that photo.
Sure.
I don't look at it like that. I just like, I like people that take photos with light, and that, things that will stand out a little bit more. I have a handful of photographers that I have followed off and on, over the years. And I think other people are your main inspiration, really, because they're going out and about and they're getting different things. And even if it's something, even if it's a photo from a popular location that everybody's been to and shot dozens of times, it doesn't really, like, I know some people say, well, why would you go? But, everybody goes there. Why would you go there? It's been shot to death. But that's a sort of, to me, quite a small way of looking at it, because the light's never going to be the same tomorrow as it was today. And you may or may not have got a good photo from there, or you might be learning, or so to me, it doesn't matter where you're shooting, as long as you're happy doing it. Yeah, and so people that are sort of starting out in the industry, I find them quite inspiring, because when I was back at the beginning as well, having no idea what I was doing, you did come up with a few gems that should never have been achievable, to be fair. So looking around, I definitely spend a bit of time on the internet. I like magazines, and I follow quite a lot of photography magazines, and a bit of all sorts, really. And I try and sort of, lockdown taught me, or and my accident, that have something closer to home that I can actually do. So I did start a bit of a project last year. So now I sort of try and have a little side project where I don't have to get on a plane or get in the car or whatever. I'm just playing around, and you're learning so much more, because if you just do one thing, you may get a little bit, I don't know. I can't imagine ever getting tired of landscape photography, but it teaches you a lot having a go at other things.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I gleaned from your website, you've mentioned that you like to push the boundaries of accepted techniques and to look for the X factor. What does that mean, I guess, to you, and what does that translate into in things that you're doing that might be a little bit different to what everyone else is doing?
Yeah, I think I wrote that sentence. I must have copied and pasted it from my last website. I think I wrote that sentence sort of earlier on, but I still think it is relevant. So, when you start, you're listening to everybody, and you're researching everything, and everyone's going on about, the rule of thirds and this and that and that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go with those set rules. I guess that's probably the main thing. I think, it's an okay guideline. But if you don't want to have that object in the center of your photo, don't put it there. So just because something might be an accepted way of doing something, or a generally accepted way of doing something, that doesn't mean you have to do it. You've got to find your own way. Plus, too, so long exposure photography is probably a little bit of a good example, in that I was shooting with people, and I was seeing people taking photos, and then I was seeing people taking long exposure photos of the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been a massive learning curve, really, because it does push you all the way. So it's kind of hard to explain, but if you thought that you want your water a little bit smoother, but you don't know how to do that, then you just have a go. So then you come up with ways of doing stuff that may or may not be the right way of doing it, or the way that's generally accepted, but it works for you.
Yeah.
So there are there's some random things that I still do. I find myself doing that I just did right back at the beginning, and they still work, and I carry on with them. But if I tried to explain them to somebody else, it would be hard. Or if somebody saw me doing them, they'd be like, why is she doing it that way? When I was on the photo pills camp, there was a couple of people there, a couple of the leaders that were there, and I'm setting up, and and they were like, okay, so we need to do it step by step, and we start with this, and then we do that, and we do that, and we do that, and we do that. And I was like, why would you? Because I can just throw those on there and just crank that up to that. And I don't know. So I'm probably a little bit not good enough at stopping and thinking, because I dive right into what I think I'm going to do.
Not out there with the light meter calculating the exposure time.
That's not me. Not me at all.
Down to points of seconds and whatever.
No. And to be fair, like I do have a couple of sort of apps on my phone that help you work out, how long your exposure needs to be for, and that, and I'll do it, and I'll look at that, and then I'll take that photo, and I'll be like, nah, not long enough, or whatever it happens to be. So it's going to be too dark, so I better change that. And yeah, it really is. It's probably not so much really pushing the boundaries anymore. I think that was a little bit more when I was starting. I was just like, oh no, I'm just going to do it this way because that's too hard. Whereas now it's more about developing your own style, I guess, and I do, I still have people put comments on my photos now and again and say, oh, those clouds are a bit streaky, you've really smoothed those right out. And I go, yes, I have, thank you. That's what I was aiming for. Sometimes I was aiming for it, sometimes it might have been a bit of an oopsie-daisy, but take the feedback, but don't take it to heart. That's probably
I go along with that. So I guess in terms of taking images, are you trying to do something that is unique and yours, or are you sort of
well, I do try and have my own style on it, which can be difficult sometimes if it's something that you've been shooting a lot or people have seen a lot of.
I'm not talking so much about the position and the subject. It's more about the style of that extra long exposure that's got the streaky clouds or whatever.
I really love that streaked out cloud. I like my water to be very, very glassy. I like it as smooth as you can possibly get it. If it's clear, I want to see through it, and it's got to be completely smooth, and my clouds have to be streaked out. I'm not a lover of photos that don't have clouds in them, but I do take them because sometimes there's no clouds when you're out there, which is annoying.
Yep.
And so, but I'm quite careful about those photos because I think, I don't know, I just have this thing in the back of my head that the color's a bit weird. When you do a really long exposure, you can reduce the color. The longer you go, to me, that reduces the intensity of the color a little bit. So you've got to be a bit careful. And then if you've got no clouds at all, it can be like pink it's an odd color. And I come from a background of, I know mixed color mixing and that kind of stuff. So I just look at it and go, well, it's not actually pink. It's actually, pink with a bit of, So I don't know. That's not to say that that's not okay, because that's perfectly fine if that's what you're after. But I struggle with clear skies. I just do. I like lots of clouds, and I love a good reflection. I do love a good reflection. And if it's a bit windy, I'm quite prepared to put a 15 stop on and stand there all day until I get a nice smooth one. But it's a real balancing act then, isn't it? Because if you're just taking one image and you take a 5, 6, 7 minute exposure or something, you might get your water but your clouds might be so streaked out now they just look grey. So, you know, you've got to be thinking about that kind of stuff all the time. I did buy that 15 stop, especially because Dale Sharp was having a go at me about the fact that I didn't have a 15 stop in my kit when we were on in Iceland, and I was like, oh, you know, really just put a 10 together with a 6 and it'll be all good. But it wasn't really quite the same, and so I did buy it, and I have used it a lot. I shoot a little bit during the day now, which I never would have done before, but now if it's a nice cloudy day, I'll get the 15 stop out and fills in a bit of time. Because it can be really boring between sunrise and sunset. You just sleep all day.
Waiting for the sun to go down.
Yeah. So probably I am really pushing for the long exposures. Sometimes conditions don't suit a long exposure, you know, landscape conditions. It's not always, you don't always need one. Sometimes the mountains and the clouds, they just look amazing just the way they are. So you don't always have to have filters on, but I do love a good filter.
I don't mind a bit of filtering. Are you trying to get everything in the one exposure, or are you happy to blend, or do you just do to get
the majority of the time? I think I'm a little bit of a lazy photographer. The majority of the time I'm trying to get it in one exposure, but it obviously doesn't work all the time, and sometimes you do need to do a bit of focus stacking. So I wouldn't do more than 3.
Okay.
Because I'd be bored after that. I'm so 3's enough. That's enough. You know, for an average sort of landscape. But I used to be mad about bracketing, and I have been sort of doing a bit of bracketing again lately. So the old Nikon D750 is an amazing camera for bracketing. It brackets and then it blends the photo in camera, so you still only have one image.
Okay. Does it blend it as a raw, or is it a blended?
They're still raw files. Yeah, they're still raw files. They're amazing. You get all 3, but then you end up with, if you took 3, then you end up with 4. So you've got all your different ones, and then they'll do one together for you. And 9 times out of 10, that's what you use.
Good enough. Yeah.
But the Z7 doesn't do that, so you have to work a little bit harder.
That's fine. Well, the Canon 6D I've got does that. I've played around with it.
Oh, nice.
I'm overly keen. I prefer. I'm probably a dial twiddler too much, and I prefer the control. Either that or I'm just a control freak, which I already know I am. You know.
I know for me, when I go out shooting, like I don't often have, unless I'm really going after a particular thing or it's a job or something like that, I don't really have like preconception of exactly what I want to do. So I will often take 2 or 3 different types of photos. So I might do some bracketing, and I might do some focus stacking, and then I might just do and often I end up just using the single. I'm quite, it just depends what conditions are like, I suppose.
No, I'm a bit the same. Depends. I'm largely, if I'm bracketing, it's largely for dealing with vast in dynamic range, real bright highlights and real dark shadows, and no.
I'm a bit of a lazy editor, so that's probably where that comes in a little bit. So I went through this stage where I was just like, the editing was actually the really bit that I didn't like. I was I like being outside and I like taking the photos, and then I'd get really excited and run it into Lightroom, and then I'd be like, oh, that's enough. I'd look at 2 or 3 and I'd be, that's enough. But I've really sort of trained myself, and I'm enjoying it more and more as time goes on. But I used to have this thing, if I haven't sorted out the basics in 15 minutes, that photo's not good enough, and I would just toss it out.
Wow.
Not delete it, but I just wouldn't, I'd move on. But I have tried to get out of that, and I still do. It's still 15 or so minutes to do the basics, and I try and do, which was a tip that Elia Liccardi gave me.
Okay.
Edit 2 photos at the same time, because he said you need to be jumping around so that things jump back into your line of vision that you may not see before. And so I actually do that a lot of times, and it has helped. Yeah, it has helped. Not for, do 20 minutes or quarter of an hour or whatever on one, but if it's something that needs quite a bit of work doing to it, or you're doing something in particular, then have something else that's a bit easier going, so that, I thought it was a bit, this is going to take me forever, but it doesn't. It actually does help, and it does drag your eye back to if you've
you build that into your workflow.
Yeah, Yeah, I quite often have two going.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only ever really used Lightroom up until probably about a year ago. I've done little bits and pieces in Photoshop, but I'd never used it prior to photography. So it was just a nightmare. And so I went into the course at the beginning of last year, and it wasn't a photography course, but it was a Photoshop course, and that was great. Yeah. And now I just have the basics that I need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I came at it a little bit the other way around. I'm more on the Photoshop side than the light.
Wow.
I do a little bit of there's some presets that I use in Lightroom, which largely zeros everything. And then I might play around with white balance. I might play around with the clarity or the dehaze, depending on the shot. But that's pretty much it in Lightroom, and then it goes into Photoshop, and then that's usually where I'm dodging burning and contrast adjustment and all that sort of thing. That's where all the magic happens for me. But then I came at it from I was doing web graphics and so forth, back in the day, and so that sort of I forced myself to learn a few things in Photoshop, and then in a while ago, I was also doing screenshot editing, which might sound a little bit weird, but taking a screenshot from a game and turning that into a piece of art as opposed to just a screenshot.
Wow.
Of the game. Yeah. So I did that for a while, which obviously was almost all Photoshop. Give you an example. How you have the edges of objects in a game, they're actually made up of little square pixels. So removing jaggies along the edge of that and just smoothing that out, smudging and smoothing and blurring and whatever, just to smooth that edge out. Spend hours on that. That was me. That's
wow. See, that takes commitment and patience. It does. I think if there was something that I want to, and there is, because you're always learning, I know minimal things in Photoshop. I have probably 3 or 4 tools that I am really confident at, and color is not one of them. But I'm still trying. I'm still trying with the color, because I know people are very good at it, and there's so much composite work and so much Photoshop work out there now that you have to try and keep up. If you want to sort of keep up on social media and that kind of stuff, you do have to try and keep up. I don't think I'll ever be a full-on composite photographer or anything, but I think it's important to know how to do some of those things. But I do I like my photos to sort of resemble what happened on the day if I can.
Yeah, same here. I'm not saying I don't do a composite or two, but the things like doing those jaggy removal wedges, whatever. One of the things that's really helpful for is, one of the things that happens if you're not careful with your editing is halos and things. So
that's right.
I know how to get rid of them.
Well done. I'll hit you up about that one.
Down to the pixel level, and it may take a little while, but it might be frustrating sometimes. But I do find rarely find one in any of my images.
I do find removing things. I always got annoyed with Lightroom because it couldn't do it. And it's not that I want to remove a lot, but sometimes there'll be a branch in the way, or a flex thing that wasn't, I don't know, some little thing. And I never was happy with it. I just couldn't get it to work. And so I've worked really hard on that for Photoshop, and it's amazing how easy it is in there. Now that I've finally figured out how to do it.
Tricks and traps, it's
absolutely
for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I guess is that one of the ways that you're looking to extend yourself with learning and developing your craft, and and trying to push boundaries,
Yeah.
I guess, by understanding the tools and so forth a little more.
Most definitely, actually. Like I said, I don't think I'll ever be a huge kind of Photoshopper or composite type person, but I want to have enough tools that I can do the things that I want to do. And that's partly, you know, like I was happy with just using Lightroom for a long time, but then all of a sudden I wanted a bit more and it just wasn't capable. So it does, you know, the latest update, in fact, is amazing. It's got so much more in there. I'm really loving it. But yeah, so that's probably where my learning is for the next kind of year or so. You know, and sort of playing around with the different projects. I did my little textures project last year, which I really, really enjoyed. It was so much fun and so easy compared to like hiking up a mountain. And things like I did quite a bit of shooting of birds and things, not with a gun, last year. And that is a skill. That is a real skill, but I loved it. Totally different type of, you know, photography. So, but I'd like to play around with that a little bit more. I've come across a couple of really amazing bird photographers in the last year, and in different locations, and just little tips and things, you know, that you probably wouldn't think about.
Totally different shooting style to landscapes. It's
I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I shot birds,
you really need a lot of patience for.
You do. The first time I shot birds, we were at a gannet colony, and it was actually a funded trip for a destination. And one of the girls was a bird photographer, and she was a very good bird photographer. And here I am happily snapping away, you know, thinking bloody birds are all around me. I hated it because I don't like birds flying around my too close. And I could hear this voice yelling, "You need to turn around, you're just getting their asses." So I was only shooting them from the back. And I was like, oh yes, that'll be what I need to do. They need to be facing me. And I was just happy to think I might have got it in focus, but it was only its butt, so it didn't really count. But we have moved on to that, which is good. But that was hilarious. And then she apologized to me after. She said, "I'm so sorry I yelled at you." And I was like, I wish you'd yelled at me a bit earlier in the day. I hadn't wasted half the day. Oh, so funny.
What's the most memorable experience you've had while shooting?
Good or bad?
No, both.
Okay, so good experiences would be, actually, can you see that photo on the wall behind me?
I can, yeah.
Just so it's down where my batch is, and I was shooting a job for Nikon, and I was shooting with an F100 film camera, and it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. I'd never done anything with film before. I had to get like I only had to get 3 inches, I think. And they gave me 3 rolls of film, and I went through like 9 rolls of film, and it was just an absolute nightmare. Just because I couldn't get the color to work. It just was horrible. And then we had this, and I'd more or less given up on it actually. And we had this amazing big storm rocking right at the, you know, last hour. And I got this photo of the water from the waves washing over the road and over the bridge, and that would probably be, it was like, thank you Lord for that photo. But it was the most amazing time just standing there and seeing it. I've only seen it once before, and I wasn't a photographer, so I didn't really appreciate it. But yeah, that would be, for taking a photo, that's probably the photo that I love the most. And I've never sold it. It's not on my website or anything like that. It's just for me. Yeah.
Nice. So what do you do if you're struggling and, you know, hitting that creative wall? How do you deal with that?
I just make myself actually go out. Because you can sit there and be looking for some inspiration while you're mindlessly scrolling through something else on Instagram or whatever, and you're not really taking anything in. I think if you really do have a block with it, the first thing is to feel good. You need to feel good to be able to do good. So get outside, go for a walk, take the camera, you know, go to the beach. Beach is ideal. The beach is perfect. Not everybody has a beach, of course, but you know, there's nothing like sea breeze to make you feel alive. And just start again. You know, you don't even have to edit them. Just start taking them, and then all of a sudden you'll get through, and you'll have taken half a dozen photos, and you're like, wow, that's a photo. That's the one. Yeah. So I guess that's probably the main thing. If I get really, really down about it, which doesn't happen very often at all, but I'll be like, oh God, I'm sick of seeing the same old everywhere I go. And that's my photos as well. I'll do a course, an online course. So, and I've done quite a few, mostly free ones, but I pay for them as well, because I know that, you know, photographers are they're trying, even if they're not full time, it's an expensive business. You need to pay them for their work. So, you know, I've done courses with, I've got Will Patina, I've got Marco Grassi, I've got, you know, Elia Liccardi, all sorts of different ones. And even if you're just sitting there watching it, even if it's stuff that you already do, there is going to be something in there that you will learn, and then you want to have a go. So it gets you back out, gets you thinking about it again.
That's great advice. Great advice. If you weren't doing photography as a hobby, what would you do with your time?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. If I didn't have my company, what would I do? Would I want to do photography more? That would be easier to answer it the other way around. If I didn't have my day job, I'd be doing photography all of the time. But if I wasn't a photographer, it would be something in the creative industries, but I'm just not really sure what. So my background is in fashion and all of that kind of stuff, but my actual job of running the company is literally IT and keeping governments happy and writing all day. So I don't even get to do the creative side of that very often. So maybe back to that sort of thing. I don't know, arty stuff.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Tell me something that nobody would know about you.
Something that nobody would know about me. I'm a little bit accident prone.
Okay.
I wonder if I should tell you this. I haven't talked about this before, actually.
You don't have to if you don't want to. Mind you, it is only you and I. Nobody else listens to this.
This is right. This is right. Okay, so I'm a little bit, I've got a bit extreme about safety over the years, so about keeping yourself safe when you're out taking photos. So some people in New Zealand do know this, but even all of the people that were there that weekend, not one of them talked about it. And so I think people realised it was a little bit drastic. So this was Castle Point, which is in the Wairarapa in New Zealand. And we've shot the lighthouse there, I don't know how many times, dozens of times. And we did it, you know, for sunrise. And the next sunrise, I was like, I'm not going back up there. I'm going up Castle Rock. That's where I'm going for sunrise. So we headed up there in the pitch black, and there had been, okay, so I'll just jump to the chase. A sea lion was hiding in the bushes, bit through my leather hiking boot, right through my foot, and then reared up and sent me over the cliff. And I went straight down onto the only rocks on the whole beach and smashed my shoulder to smithereens, broke my left arm. I was black from my chin to my knees, twisted my knee, my foot was stuffed. It was full on. And it changed my world. Yeah, for quite a while. It was probably
the accident you were talking about before.
Yeah. It's been a fight. It's been a fight to get back to semi-normal. I mean, it is normal. I can do all day-to-day things, and I'm not in pain now. I've had 2 really big operations. So the first one failed, and so then I had to start again, and that was a bit of a bit hard work. And I can hold, you know, it was 2 years before I could hold my camera, and I couldn't hold it up. So I couldn't use my big lens or anything like that and just hold it. I had to have a tripod. It was nearly a year before I could go shooting again. I just walked around in this cuff, and I spent, I don't know, I'm still at physio. 4 years down the track. So it was pretty full on. And we weren't stupid. We'd stopped on the beach. We had our headlamps on. We checked the entire beach. There was no sea lions there. We stopped at the bottom of the path. We checked both sides of the path. We checked up the path, and we were checking side to side as we were going up. And the person in front of me, he didn't want him. He just wanted me.
He was lying in wait.
He was lying in wait. Yeah. So, you know, I don't think I did anything stupid. I wasn't being reckless. I'd been really careful. But sometimes even when you're really careful, photography is a dangerous business.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
So I had when I was between operations, and I went to so I was out of the cuff, but I couldn't do a lot, but I could, you know, get my camera up on my tripod and everything, and off I went to Patagonia, and bugger me down in Torres del Mar National Park after sunrise. I'm literally walking along, and a gust of wind comes over, picks me up with my camera bag on it, and throws me fair across the park.
Yeah,
and I just landed. Over there
around for doing that.
Oh, I thought, you have got to be bloody kidding me. I thought I'd done it again. But anyway, once the pain eased off, I hadn't done any more damage to it, but it was borderline.
So aside from obviously, you know, you can't sort of lift the same sort of weights that you were doing with the earlier series cameras and so forth, what other things has that sort of brought about that you have to be more careful of, or whatever, when you're out in the field?
I guess the first thing is that I'm actually just more careful. I was a little bit, you know, I never worried about going close to edges on cliffs and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like my balance isn't quite, I'm not saying that I'm off balance, but I don't feel as confident with my balance as I used to if I'm sort of, you know, climbing something or near something. So I'm a little bit careful about that. If I'm at all concerned, I have somebody with me, you know, so I'm not as keen about walking in the dark anywhere on my own or anything like that. And I actually carry a personal locator beacon now, because I still want to go out on my own, and because I like being out there on my own. But I'm not really known for my sense of direction anyway. So, so I didn't buy it, actually. It was bought for me, and I do carry it with me because I'm just like, you know, the luck I've been having the last few years. So if anything did happen. But other than that, not really. I just do keep my bag as light as I can possibly get it. And I have gone right through the bag. So, you know, my camera is now lighter. I'm not saying my lenses are all that much lighter, because, you know, if you want a good one, they are blooming heavy, aren't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of glass in it.
Yeah, and I only carry the filters that I think I'm going to need, you know, if I'm walking anywhere. Everything else that I used to carry in my bag, I used to have a spare everything, because nothing would be my worst nightmare than breaking a filter and I didn't have a spare, you know. But I don't carry any spare stuff anymore. Just really minimal. I even went for the whole carbon fiber tripod in the end, and it's made a huge difference. Yeah, I can lift it on, you know, I can get it on and off myself now. So yeah, it's all good.
Oh, that's good. I'm pleased that you know, your recovery's gone so well, and that you sort of
it humbles you a little bit. It humbles you a little bit when you literally can't shower yourself, you know, because everything's in plaster. But yeah, however, we survived. That's the main thing.
That is the main thing, and I'm bloody glad you did too. So.
Yeah, I can't believe I even told you this, but it's okay. I had nightmares about it for a long time, because when I was lying on the beach, I could hear the thundering as it was running down the beach towards me, and I thought it was coming back for another go, but of course it didn't. It went past, and you know, and it did literally give me nightmares for a while. But now I just think, oh, that was then, and this is now, and you know.
Wow. Are there any photographers out there that I should be talking to?
There's lots, really. So I was thinking about this because I know you asked this question. There is a photographer in Australia that I've been with that I went with to Patagonia, and I'd followed him for a little while, but I didn't have any idea how focused and technically
brilliant
he is.
Okay.
Which is Chandra Bong.
Yeah.
He is, if you've ever, if you've got to sit and watch him work, he was like, I had to work harder. I worked harder because of him, and I try a little bit harder because of him as well. The other photographers that I work with are great friends as well, Jenny Tan and Tom Luck and those sort of ones. But Chandra takes taking photos to a whole nother level.
Yeah, no, his work is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and he's technically amazing, even with his editing and stuff like that. He doesn't, get to do it as much as he would like, I'm sure, but he's definitely worth chatting to. In New Zealand, oh God, there's just so many now. Really, really good people. There's Wayne Meads.
Yep.
And Isaac Hawthorne. Okay. They've both been around a couple of years now. They're busy photographers, so they tend to sort of get out as much as they possibly can. Yeah. But they're definitely up and comers, I would say, definitely. Fantastic. Yeah. Jed from NZ, he does a bit of astro, that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for astrophotograph's gone up a level, hasn't it?
Oh, tell me about it. There's so many of them in New Zealand that the South Island
are good.
Yeah.
Oh. So I think it'll be something I might put a little bit more effort into this year. Yeah.
There's a few good ones that I've been talking to about coming on over here in Australia, living around sort of Mildura, that sort of, some really good dark skies. They've got some rivers and lakes and whatever that they can sort of, and those sort of solo trees, the dead trees,
beautiful, wouldn't they?
Desert landscapes and whatever. Yeah. So
that's some of those guys else. Get them on. Yeah. Tom Ray. So Tom Ray's do you follow him? He's only like 16 or 17 or something, and his work is incredible. It really is. He'd be worth having a chat to. His dad does a lot of astronomy and Yeah,
okay. All right, well, I got one more question for you, and it's obviously the most important one. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yeah, honestly, I think you don't live properly if you don't have pineapple on pizza.
Fair enough.
I love pineapple on pizza. I know it's very, un-Italian, but I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. Got to be done. I have a question for you. Peanut butter, crunchy or smooth?
Oh, crunchy.
Absolutely. All right, we can stay friends then.
The smooth stuff is just
Why would you?
There's no point.
No, I totally agree.
It hasn't got lumps in it. It's not peanut butter.
Funny.
Well, thank you ever so much for taking the time out with me today, Deb. It's been absolutely wonderful, and hearing that last story about falling off a cliff, that's just blown me away. But also made my day.
Good. It'd be kind of funny now if it didn't break so much, if I wasn't so broken. But,
Where can people find what you do?
So I've got a website. So it's debclarkphotography.nz. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and it's debc_NZ.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.